2025 is now over, and with that comes another year of me playing and reviewing roguelites. And honestly, I think this was a pretty great year for roguelites for me, even if, of course, not every game lived up to the hype. So let's get into it. To start off is Nordhold, a tower defense roguelite that also mixes in an economic town management element. You gradually reveal and unravel a hex grid map where you place your towers as you unlock them. Towers cost different resources to buy, and you gain those resources by building up your town and assigning workers to different tasks or different buildings between waves. These different towers can combo together in different ways, be upgraded with different relics or banners that you find, and create fun synergies. I like Nordhold a lot as a whole. It has good tower defense elements, and the economic management was satisfying, which made it one of the better tower defense roguelites that I played. Most of my qualms with Nordhold come from that long-term replayability, especially around tower upgrade choices and with in-run adaptability, though they've had a lot of updates since I've last played it, to be fair. I think Nordhold is absolutely worth trying if you're a roguelite tower defense fan, but it falls out of being a must-play for the broader genre and the broader audience. Next, Reignbreaker is an action roguelite set medieval-themed cyberpunk world. You have a standard attack and dodge, but you also have more powerful javelin attacks that build up heat. Different javelins have different attack patterns and different on-hit effects. And this heat mechanic creates a very unique element where it either serves as a cooldown, where you have to wait a while before you can use your abilities again, or you can more actively manage it by lowering your heat with your basic attacks or other different effects in your build. Reignbreaker has a very appealing package at first glance, which made me try it. And it has some interesting game mechanics, like that javelin, and the level design mixing in-close encounters and open-world exploration. But ultimately, I don't recommend this game. Reignbreaker has a lot of frustration points that prevented me from getting into a nice groove. And other elements of the game felt unfinished, like the number of build upgrade types that are available. It does do other things uniquely, like how it slowly increases enemy and boss variety, the length of runs as you win more, but it felt like some of those elements weren't ironed out either. If this game was still getting more content updates, it might be worth following, but the game studio closed pretty immediately after release. I think Shogun Showdown has basically perfectly executed what it sets out to do. It's a 2D tactical roguelite where you get tiles each turn you can use to move, attack enemies, etc. Each turn, you can queue up tiles for your future attacks, actually attack, or move around. After that, enemies move in a telegraphed way. It's a pretty simple cadence, but it really rewards careful planning of each queued attack, your movement, even the direction you face, because the right move can lead you to clearing out all of the enemies at once or getting hit with a hard combo that ends your run. The game really fleshes out this core gameplay and executes on everything incredibly well. You have different characters that play meaningfully different from each other. You unlock alternative run paths, you unlock meaningfully different bosses, enemies that require you to learn new counters and playstyles, and even your attacks have a surprising amount of variety. I guess the biggest flaw for Shogun Showdown is just that core gameplay is quite simple. But I also feel that depth and creativity within that limits of the core gameplay is what allows Shogun Showdown to be so great. I would highly recommend this game to any fans of more tactical roguelites. I've actually been playing this game on mobile for years, but now that it's released on Steam, I think it's time to finally talk about Slice and Dice. You get a team of characters that each have some die associated with them. As you play more, you get on relics you can equip on your characters that adjust those die in some way. And you can occasionally upgrade or level up your characters to get new characters with different base die. Each turn, you roll your dice to get different abilities, ranging from attacks, defending abilities, and many other niche effects. Slice and Dice really shines because it has a lot of content. It has a great variety of characters and therefore dice, great enemy variety, and a massive number of game modes to unlock that all make things feel different. It's a simple premise and easy to pick up, but it scales quite nicely with that corresponding progression as well. There's a reason this is one of only a handful of games that I actually play on mobile, and it's worth trying at some point for any strategy or deck builder roguelite fan. Lost in Random: The Eternal Die is another action roguelite. It has fairly standard movement with different weapons that have basic attacks, charge attacks, secondary abilities, and of course, a dodge. The game does all of these components in a satisfying way that you've come to expect from action roguelites in the genre. What sets Lost in Random apart, though, is the build crafting system, where all of your passive relics are placed on this grid system, and each relic has both the inherent passive effects and a color status that can be chained together into rows to give you stat buffs for your character. I love this build crafting element. We have to think through different placements, relic effects versus color statuses, all those things like that when choosing relics. Ultimately, Lost in Random is a game with a lot of familiar elements, a novel twist on build crafting, but it lacks enough to get true replayability that the genre greats have. This game also has a decent amount of story for a roguelite, but it never builds up to anything super satisfying. The build crafting is fun, but the relic variety felt stale surprisingly quickly. So it's a solid action roguelite, but it's nothing that really stands out. Morsels is a game that tries to recapture some of the magic of roguelites from a decade ago, like The Binding of Isaac or Nuclear Throne. In this game, you create a team of up to 3 morsels that have different movesets of attacks, special abilities, and even how they move at a basic level. Along the way, you clear enemies and seek out exits to future levels, breaking away from the standard mold of today of clearing waves of enemies, going on to a new room, rinse and repeat. I think where this game really shines is in creating mysteries and Easter eggs, where you find secret levels and bosses, sometimes through deliberate searches, and other times as surprises that you have no idea how to replicate. 2 main flaws of this game for me made it a bit of a letdown though. I realized a couple of hours in that I basically wasn't actually build crafting on any of my runs, and I only ever achieved one truly satisfying build. And second, it manages to replicate some of those frustrations of the past roguelites around getting annoying upgrades, where it's super easy to die with a bad item or passive choice in a way that discouraged experimentation. So Morsels was fun to play around with for a bit, had amazing vibes, and some good secrets to explore, but I was really let down by that build crafting and some of those frustration points. StarVaders was a roguelite that I saw a lot of praise for, but I only picked up this past month. It's a good combination of a card game and a tactical RPG. Not the first time I've seen that combo in a roguelite, but it's probably my favorite of those fusions that I have seen. Broadly, you control a mech or summons, they move around with cards, and you use them to clear out enemies with attack cards. Enemies march down at you, and you have to clear them out before they get to you and deal damage. Like any good deck builder, it has a lot of good card synergies, different relics that mesh with cards, etc., etc. This game has some great progression pacing as well for getting unlocks, unlocking new card decks, different heroes for your mechs, things like that. The game also uses a couple different creative elements. For example, this game has a randomized card pack system. You have a subset of all the cards in the game that will be available on that given run that have inherent combos with each other. This allows you to have variety run to run without having a very bloated and overly large card pool in each run that really dilutes things out. I really like this core gameplay of StarVaders. Since I've only recently started playing it, the biggest question that's still out for me is about long-term replayability. And I have some concerns in a couple areas around there, like the difficulty levels, for example. But for my playtime so far, StarVaders is now the bar to pass for tactical deck building roguelites. I was really excited to play the full game for Knightica after trying the demo earlier this year in my Next Fest roundup. It's an auto-battler roguelite that takes direct inspiration from multiplayer auto-battlers like Teamfight Tactics. You place units on a grid battlefield, and each turn, you buy units from a shop that can be stacked together to get higher level units. In addition to different base stats, aka size, attack, and health, the units have unique passive effects, placement-based effects, and can be upgraded with enhancements, and of course, there are also relics to flesh out your build. I think the core gameplay is really good, and I like all the different units and characters that are present. There's also an asynchronous multiplayer mode, which I enjoyed. I liked how you had to think through which characters combo together, how you place them next to each other, things like that. But I was really let down when I played this full version, because I was pretty quickly struck with this feeling of, oh wait, that's it? I quickly felt like I'd seen all the units and the build archetypes, and I felt like my runs got pretty stale pretty quickly. Enemy variety is another weak point, and all the bosses are the same run to run, for example. So there's an amazing core here, which I loved, but I just felt so quickly disappointed by that run-to-run variety that I put the game down pretty quickly. Roguelite mechanics can theoretically be added to any underlying gameplay, and Wordplay takes that principle and applies roguelite mechanics to Scrabble or similar word games. At its core, you're playing words with rare letters to get you more points, and longer words also give you more points. When you reach certain threshold of points each turn, you move on to the next round. The roguelite mechanics come in how you modify your tiles with extra effects, change which tiles you draw, and gain relics that add new modifiers, like giving you more points for playing words without certain letters, for example. I think this game is interesting, and I had a fun, albeit short time with it. Ultimately, I think this game has 2 fundamental flaws. First, this game is first and foremost a word-finding game, so it meant you're often encouraged to take a really long time to optimize your word choice to the detriment of all the roguelite elements. Second, certain boss mechanics would hard counter certain builds, like a surprise mechanic requiring all words to start with the letter R, but your build only works if you create your own words that start with the letter S. I still enjoyed this game as a novelty, but it never stuck past that due to those core frustrations. I really loved Ball Pit, this next game. It's a brick-breaker roguelite at its core, where you control a character that shoots balls at waves of enemies that are marching towards you. It uses a survivor-like or bullet heaven leveling system, where you pick up experience orbs as you kill enemies, and choose between multiple upgrade options. This game has super fun build crafting, with a lot of different characters, different balls, and the option to evolve or fuse balls together to make super powerful and broken combos. The game really encourages you to create those super busted builds and just have fun with it. There's also a unique town building, Reignbreaker meta progression system, a unique difficulty system as well that uses game speed, among other things. I think Ball Pit has some notable flaws that limited long-term replayability for me. Some mechanics I would mark as spoilers, for example, were more divisive. But I think Ball Pit is absolutely worth checking out if you want a roguelite that's both great and has different vibes from the standard roguelite games that you see so often. Talented is a tower defense or bullet heaven-ish roguelite where you control a character that defends 4 different lanes from waves of enemies. Between waves, you unlock additional power-ups in this randomized skill tree run to run. You get different passive unlocks, more active skills to use, things like that. There are different characters you can play as well that have fully different skill pools and different passive pools. I think Talented is just okay. It's a simple core gameplay loop where you can just build craft, aim your attacks, and time your specials. But it's a nice core gameplay loop, especially when you get to later levels and play at higher game speed. But the simple gameplay needs to be quickly backed up by things like higher difficulties and increasing variety. And while the game has those things on paper, they were locked behind too slow or grindy of a progression system, so it didn't keep my interest. I had my couple bucks of fun worth with it, it's not an expensive game, but it didn't leave a lingering impression that would make me recommend it to other people. Monster Train 2 was another one of the games I was most excited for this past year because it's a sequel to one of my favorite roguelites, and I think it really delivered. It's a card game roguelite where you place units on 3 different levels of a train to defend it from ascending waves of enemies. You can upgrade your units with cards during your run, attack enemies with spells, and between runs, you flesh out your deck, upgrade your cards, and gain powerful relics. This game really shines with how you plan out your unit placement, how they synergize with each other, and how your remaining cards and spells shore up any weaknesses that your units don't cover. The enemy and boss variety also force you to adapt your build and even change how you plan out your whole deck at higher difficulties. You also have hero units you can plan your deck around, as well as choosing 2 different clans, and therefore 2 different decks for each run that allow for a lot of different synergies depending on which combos you pick. Monster Train 2 basically supersedes and improves upon Monster Train 1, with only a couple exceptions. It has purely more builds, more ways to build craft, such as equipment, new challenges, boss options, and new game mode options as well, such as the Endless mode. And they're still actively updating this game with new bosses and other content. If you're a card game roguelite fan, Monster Train 2 is definitely a no-brainer to try out. This next one is an FPS roguelite that has a fast-paced gameplay with mechs with a cartoonish art style. In Battle Shapers, you fight through different areas that get randomized modifiers to clear out all 3 bosses and the final boss. The game really shines with its movement abilities, dodging, and the ability to finish off staggered enemies for shield regeneration. Comboing your movement, your abilities, and good gunplay together make for some satisfying moments and create this dynamic gameplay. The game also has some jumping and movement puzzles that you can unlock and clear to allow you to slowly improve your moveset and abilities in a Metroidvania type way. The satisfying moments of Battle Shapers, though, are held back by areas that affect the long-term replayability, like middling gun variety and different classes or cores in this game that were a little disappointing to me, either because they didn't feel different enough from each other or they had some playstyles that I just didn't like. There's no fatal flaws in this game. I still think Battle Shapers is a fun game to play, but it just lacks anything to actually get me addicted and get me to keep playing it. LONESTAR is a strategy spaceship game where you effectively roll dice and place them into ship modules that power them up for different effects based on the number you place and the color of that tile. Then you have a tug-of-war systems for each lane of your small playing field. Having more power in each of these lanes both decreases damage dealt to you and can, in turn, deal damage to the enemy ship if you win that lane. The core gameplay of LONESTAR involves collecting and upgrading these ship modules, positioning them carefully between runs, and loading in the dice, which they call energy, in the most optimal, best way possible. You also have to adapt to enemy ships as they come, adjusting your ship modules when it seems appropriate. I think LONESTAR is the perfect game for a subset of players, and a generally decent game for everyone else. If you love that careful mathematical planning of how to line up all of your modules, how to play each number in a carefully calculated way to get the exact best results that you want, it's perfect. If you're less meticulous, it's still a fun game. It's forgiving enough, and the variety of the ships, modules, and pilots all add some good replayability. But you might start to get tired of things like starting every run out with 1 of 3 layouts, needing to be so meticulous constantly, and having some modules that just don't quite work how you expect. Shape of Dreams is one of the biggest surprises for me in 2025. It's an action roguelite that takes after MOBA games with the 4 active abilities and click-to-move control scheme that you can also play with more familiar action roguelite controls. The game has satisfying abilities, and you can fully exchange all of your abilities during your run, including your starting abilities or your class abilities, which is a unique element as well. The build crafting relies on leveling up stats, and more importantly, equipping gems onto your abilities to create synergies with those abilities, as well as even other gems that are placed. I think this game is just really good. And the more I played it, the more I feel the developers just understand what makes an action roguelite fun. Good core combat, build crafting that allows for a satisfying blend of flexibility with how you use your gems, as well as creative and broken builds, while still being confined to just 4 abilities at a time with 3 gems each. It has also some nice surprises to explore in online co-op. It does have some grindy progression, though it's something they have improved upon and sped up. And importantly, you don't actually need to grind very much in order to unlock all of the important things, like all of the characters. Overall, I strongly recommend Shape of Dreams for action roguelite fans. This next game has a very trippy art style on top of a simple core gameplay loop. Ballionaire is a pachinko roguelite where you create boards with custom pegs or items. Each item has different effects that allow for different synergies with each other, like ones that create water balls when hit, and other items that have status effects that trigger with water balls, for example. I had another build, for example, where different pegs spawn more and more balls until I eventually blocked out the screen with all these pachinko balls. More powerful combos stack up more gold. You need to pass a certain gold threshold every few turns in order to keep the run going. There are a lot of different effects, and it was really fun to explore how all these things could be comboed together, which is good because the core of this game is really just those combos. I think Ballionaire was fun to try and experiment with, but it never strongly hooks me for a couple of reasons, ranging from small weird decisions here and there, like a lot of dead turns when you pass that mandatory income threshold, to a slow start to each run, where you really only get into a satisfying build after quite a few turns. I think for fans of games like Luckby and Landlord that are more purely build crafting and very minimal controlled gameplay, Ballionaire can be a fun game to try. But I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend it to people, and I almost forgot that I even played it this year. Windblown is a beautiful action roguelite from the original developers behind Dead Cells. This game has all the standard action roguelite mechanics with your attacks, dodges, different weapons you can unlock, and they've also added alternate biomes for areas throughout early access. Similar to Dead Cells, you have 2 different weapons and 2 trinkets or abilities at once. Windblown also adds a new powerful combo mechanic, where using one weapon's attack chain allows you to use a more powerful attack of your other weapon at the end. I must say that I quite like Windblown's gorgeous biomes as well, that all have their unique flavor, enemies, and bosses, although they do occasionally come with some visual clarity problems. On a more substantial point, this game has yet to really stick for me. I don't have a good reason why. I played it a couple points during early access without getting hooked so far. The most likely explanation I can think of is this game is pretty punishing at different points in time in a way that can feel unfair when you're learning new areas, new enemies, or new bosses. It's possible this is all just a skill issue so far, so I'm definitely planning to give it another solid try with the 1.0 release, whenever that is. The next game, 33 Immortals, is trying to do something unique and serve as a massive multiplayer co-op roguelite where you fight your way out of hell. You have a basic moveset of attack and dodge, and your goal is to complete various combat elements in an area with 33 total players, at least to start. The game does a great job with the co-op elements, and each character has a different weapon or powerful abilities that rely on other players to activate. And basically all the encounters in general require cooperation from multiple players. This game also succeeds in creating scale with the enemies, common massive fireballs raining down, massive boss fights, things like that. I feel mixed on this game as a whole though, and I have to put it down until the eventual 1.0 release. This game really succeeds at creating that sense of scale, the epic battles, fighting with other players, things like that. At the same time though, the combat itself feels pretty simple, to the point of feeling kind of hollow and almost boring. It also just feels kind of clunky, though you could also argue it's a more deliberate, Souls-like combat system that requires careful attack planning and attack commitment. This game also needs a large enough player base in order to sustain those 33-player lobbies, and I'm not sure it's actually being sustained right now. I think 33 Immortals is worth keeping an eye on, but probably worth waiting until the eventual 1.0 release for some balancing fine-tuning, and presumably an actual release on Steam for that resurgence in player counts. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate is a co-op action roguelite set in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe, where you, unsurprisingly, play as the Turtles. The combat feels very similar to Hades, but it does have some unique twists, namely how your secondary abilities must be charged up by dealing damage with your primary attacks. The game is really great for being a more approachable roguelite for fun co-op and some interesting difficulty mechanics. That being said, the simplicity limited my long-term replayability. The build crafting is fairly railroaded with narrow-ish range of combos, so you can only get so powerful or so creative with your builds. And while I think the enemy and the boss design is generally well done, the difficulty scales in a way that feels increasingly unfun, at least for solo players. I think Splintered Fate is a pretty great game for casual fans or for co-op. I played this game a decent number of times with one of my friends and had a lot of fun with it. But it just probably won't provide that long-term lasting satisfaction for genre veterans. Splintered Fate had 2 DLC releases that I want to talk about to start off my DLC portion of this video. The first DLC was Casey Jones in the Junkyard Jam, which adds an alternative area for one of the 4 zones that has a new mini-boss, a new area boss, as well as a new playable character, Casey Jones. The alternative zone was great for adding a new boss variety, but it only adds a plain reskin to the enemies in this area. Casey Jones is a great playable character, adds a harder hitting playstyle with a kit that also has some nice self combos. Metalhead is added as a playable character in the second DLC called Metalhead. He's unique in that he's the game's first fully ranged character, which actually works better than I thought it would. He definitely stands out in a melee-focused game, but avoids being too overpowered by his limited access to AoEs. Unlike the first DLC, it doesn't add any new enemies or areas. Around the same time as that DLC release, they did add a new game mode that has some new enemies and new playstyles, but that's free to everyone, doesn't require the DLC. Both of these DLCs also add some new artifacts and relics that modify future runs. I don't think either of these DLCs are must-buys, especially at full price, but I do think they both add good content and are worth grabbing on sale. Against the Storm is a city builder roguelite that's one of my favorites of all time, and they just released their second DLC, Nightwatchers, earlier this year. Like the first DLC, this one adds a new race, in this case the bats, 2 new biomes, and some new core gameplay updates. The bats favor an all-in, slow burn type playstyle, which is echoed in one of the biomes, Bamboo Flats. The other biome, Rocky Ravine, changes the core woodcutting mechanic and leans heavily into trading and merchants. This DLC adds more variety, new mechanics to explore, and favors new playstyles. For that reason, I love the Nightwatchers DLC. I especially love Rocky Ravine and how it twists woodcutting and trading to create something novel. At the same time, I think this DLC feels off balance-wise, and also favors a micromanagement type of play that won't appeal to everyone, especially more casual fans. For that reason, I both don't think this DLC is a must-buy, and would also recommend grabbing the Keepers of the Stone DLC first if you have to pick one of the 2. Astral Ascent is a great platformer action roguelite that stands out in particular for its amazing boss fights. This year, it released its second DLC, The Outer Reaches, which adds an alternative area for each of the 4 areas in the game, as well as one additional challenging boss fight. The areas themselves all have different enemies and different aesthetics from the base game areas, but they do also have the same rooms, same event types, etc., etc. The variety is honestly just not as meaningful as I hoped it would be, because while the basic enemies are different, they don't feel hugely different, and the basic enemies are also often sped through on the way to the more enjoyable and more interesting bosses. On that note, the DLC also adds Andromeda, who's the between area bar merchant, as an optional boss fight you can engage with in the between area, that same bar, during your runs. It's a pretty challenging but enjoyable boss fight. You also aren't punished too hard for trying out this optional boss fight, since you get your health back after the fight, and your run isn't ended if you lose. As a whole, I think this DLC is a pretty decent addition to an already good game. All the content that is added is nice, but I wish this area variety felt a little more meaningful than it actually was. So this DLC might not be worth grabbing at full price for everyone, but if you can afford it or you can get it on sale, it is still good content. If you've only played a couple roguelites, there's a solid chance that Hades is one of them. And Hades 2 released out of early access into a 1.0 full release earlier this year. I actually talked about Hades 2 last year when it was still in early access, but I wanted to bring it up again because if you made me choose only one game to be my roguelite of the year, I would have to choose Hades 2. Like the first game, Hades 2 is just a full package. I've absolutely loved sending run after run in this game. It's a great game because of that responsive combat, fun build crafting, and all the super giant extras with the art style, music, and story. The weapon variety adds a lot of replayability. The 2 different run paths add a lot of replayability as well. And even the minigame, the chaos runs, which are short one area runs, add a lot of variety and can serve as a pause between longer runs. I honestly don't think Hades 2 has any fatal flaws, though of course there's some elements here and there that could have landed better for me, like the story conclusion. As a whole, definitely worth grabbing for action roguelite fans out there, and also a great game for newcomers to the genre. As I open this video by saying, I think this was a pretty great year for roguelites for me. I played a number of games that I absolutely loved, and some of the games I played joined the ranks of my favorite roguelites. Of course, there were some duds as well, but that's always going to happen. Before I list my favorites, I want to talk about a couple other roguelites this year that I wanted to try, but never got around to playing. The top of that list for me is Blueprints, which I've heard is very unique and very fun to engage with. So because of that, I've been waiting to try it until I feel energized and in a very exploring mood. And that just hasn't really happened when I've been thinking about playing it. The other big games on my list that I missed are Absolem, a couple FPS roguelites, especially Voidbreaker, and Nine Kings. Let me know if there are any other games out there, any big ones that I missed this year. As for my favorite roguelites of the year, it was pretty hard to narrow it down, honestly. I already mentioned Hades 2 as my #1 game, and that's definitely true. I would put Shape of Dreams as my runner-up action roguelite. It just really shines, and calling back to games like Risk of Rain, while also carving out its own identity and build crafting style. My favorite deck builder was Monster Train 2. Even more than Hades 2, the sequel just fully improved on its predecessor and created a must-play experience for card game roguelite fans. StarVaders would be my runner-up for deck builders with how well it handled the tactical elements and some new mechanics that I liked, like the randomized card packs for the start of each run. Shogun Showdown was another one of my favorite games this year. As I said earlier, it takes a very narrow, limited core gameplay and really takes it to its maximum potential and creates something truly great. As a more miscellaneous roguelite, Ball Pit was such a fun playthrough, and I was really impressed by how much the developers packed into this simple core concept, as well as some of the more unique twists of the game. So that was my 2025 in roguelites. Let me know what your favorite roguelite of the year is, and let me know if there's any ones that you think I definitely need to try that I missed. I have a lot of half-finished videos right now, so hopefully I can get through some of those as well in 2026. Huge shout out to all of our channel members for helping support the channel. Please like this video to help me out in the algorithm, and thanks for watching.